You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars. Begins now.
All right, hello everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show. And of course, we are talking about the season finale of the Book of Boba Fett. We're on Monday night, but you may have noticed we're not live. So we're setting this as a premiere so you guys can chat in or whatever. We're going to try to be there to chat in too, but Daryl, I know you're going to be out of town, just one of the reasons why we're doing this. And I'm going to be working a little bit late. I don't know how late, but I should be able to jump on with you guys. Both of us will actually try to get on and chat with you guys about it. But let's get into this, man. I mean, what are your overall thoughts of this particular episode?
You know, it was cool, but it was not as grand as I thought it was going to be.
You know what? I was going to say, man, I'm actually kind of disappointed by it.
Yeah.
There was a lot of really cool elements. Yeah. I mean, there's like a lot of cool elements to it, and there's a lot to like about it, but it was lackluster.
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
You know, one of my friends and, you know, one of our newer subscribers too, Doug, he texted me. He was like, yeah, you know, I was really disappointed by this one. Because one of the things that he brought up, which, you know, it's like they're basically shooting at these things where their guns obviously have no effect on them, and yet they keep shooting. And the whole episode is basically uselessly shooting at a bunch of droids and other things.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you had to encapsulate it. So that's kind of, it's a little disappointing.
Yeah. I mean, certain things just didn't land well for me. Like even the comedy, like even with the little Major Domo, you know, guy, like he's funny in some ways, and then there's other times where it's just like, I don't know, it's just he becomes a nuisance, almost like a Jar Jar in a way.
Well, and that's it. And I felt that way basically when he was first introduced. You know, apologies. It's like, oh my goodness, somebody kill this guy.
Right.
But I
shoot him already.
Right. But I mean, I will say this. I think I actually liked him a little better in this episode because, like you said, there were times where I wanted to kill him like usual, but there were other times where I actually thought he was kind of cool and funny, which I never felt that way about him before.
Exactly. You know, but yeah, the whole thing of, you know, okay, the sanctuary's been hit. They all try to camp out there. Their whole little plan of like, okay, we're gonna put Chrysanthemum over here. We're gonna put the little mod squad people over here, and then we're gonna put, you know, who else did they have? You know, they kind of try to spread the resources out so the Pikes couldn't sneak up.
Yeah,
on
the
them.
Gamorreans and all that stuff.
Gamorreans, yeah, and you know, it was just kind of like, okay, like you got these two little Gamorrean guards. You got one black Chrysanthemum. I mean, it's just kind of like, I mean, I guess you got to do what you can, but it was just kind of like, eh.
No, I totally agree. I mean, here's what irritated me about that. It's like, they're like, well, let's hold up in the palace. And they're like, no. And, you know, one of the little, I think they're the Mos Espa Vespas or something like that. But they're like, they give this whole speech about, and it's like, okay, so instead of holding up in this actual fortress, you're going to hold up in this place that doesn't even have a door. Windows are blown out. You know what I mean? It's like, really? That's your plan? And you're convincing... Like, if I was Boba, I would have been like, no, that's a terrible idea. You have absolutely no strategy. Because the couple of things... And this is getting into it a little bit. You know, you see here him riding the Rancor. I thought that was cool. I thought that was awesome. Hands down, one of the best scenes.
I was wondering what the heck he was going to go do, and then when he came back with that thing, like when I heard it roaring, and then I was like, oh, he did not like bring out, you know, was it Moochie? whatever
I don't think it is Moochie, because Moochie was the one that was killed in Return of the Jedi.
Well, what was the one we saw the baby?
Yeah, that was in the bad. That's the Bad Batch, and then Bib Fortuna came and took him. So that he was Jabba's pet, so that was the one that we saw. Of course, that was killed by Luke, and now we have this one. that he
Gotcha.
basically gets its full grown. But yeah, I mean, him getting the Rancor, and of course, it also sounds, a little cool to say, why don't you go ride the Rancor? There is that element to it. But I mean, that part I thought was cool. There was a lot of stuff, but they could have. There's so many things they could have done. It's like hold up in the fortress where you actually can. You have defenses. Why are you putting all these people all over the place? Like you said, you got like two Gamorrean guards somewhere, and then here's it's like this episode drove me insane. Not only did they just send one or two people out to, be on the lookout, but they're out in the open. Like Chrysanthemum's just all standing out, in front. It's like, dude,
he's
go
like this
find
9-foot easy target.
Right, just go find some cover or something. Like, what are you doing? Who wrote this episode?
And then I'm thinking like, okay, well, did he have some sort of vehicle that got him there? Because once he kind of started getting overwhelmed, I kind of want to like retreat it and hightailed it back or something. But I mean, yeah, just the whole plan just seemed kind of shoddy to me. The whole freedom fighters or free people from Freetown or whatever showing up, I was like, okay, they came in this cool little tank, but it's like 12 people. Like, what? Like, are you serious? Like,
well,
come on now.
And adding to that, right? Here's the thing. Besides just maybe holding up in the fortress and using that and making them come to you, like any good general. Look, I'm not the greatest strategist in the world, but even I know this. But here's the other thing. You have a fire spray. You know that thing that you use to take out the whole motorcycle gang?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you just go in the fire spray and just go into town and shoot every pike? You're up there. And then when Boba and Din were up, why did you land? You're up there. You had the high ground, as we like to say in Star Wars. You're shooting. Now, granted, yes, maybe there's a limit to their jetpacks or something, but I've seen them stay airborne longer than the 20 seconds that they were there. I mean, it was just. I'll go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, from the strategic standpoint, I mean, there's a lot of different things, and of course, they were trying to do like the typical dramatic effect where they kind of put them back to back, and it's like slow motion, and they're all shooting at each other. I mean, shooting at people, and but quite honestly, dude, I would have had at least Mando, in his little Naboo fighter, and just start mowing the town, with that thing, and just start.
All you have to do
guys.
is have him in his little Naboo fighter, and then Boba in his, fire spray, and that would have probably won 90% of the battle. I mean, if you really, and the other thing too, which was actually a cool piece of dialogue, because again, one of the things that I think that both of us, obviously, it's funny because we both pretty much are in line with what we think of this episode. But one of the things that is interesting about it is you have this almost give and take thing going, right? You have some cool things that are being done, and then there's something that undoes it. Something stupid that your head explodes. And one of them was a cool scene where you have Din and you have Boba talking about. I love the dialogue that they have throughout this whole episode.
Yeah, I love that one part, man, where he's like, you believe that bantha pot fodder? And he was like, yeah, I do. And he was like, yeah, I do. He was like, but then I love it. Like, this is like the perfect Terminator line. It's like when he raised that gun up next to his face, he's like, this is the way. I mean, that was just like sweet to me. I was like, all right.
It was very cool. And again, in the part that I'm actually referring to, I think it's during that same part where you basically had them talking about how the other crime families are, they're actually going to attack them too, and Din's like, well, that is the smart move, and then Boba's like, yeah, it is. And I'm thinking, you didn't think about that when you, I mean, really, dude, what kind of a crime lord are you? Did you actually expect them to keep their word? You didn't prepare for this? No contingency plan here? I mean...
Well, I think that's why he felt like, he felt in a way, I think he was trying to insert that fear that, like, fear would kind of keep him in line, to borrow a line from Tarkin. But, I just don't think there was enough. They could just tell, like, okay, the Pikes just overwhelmed them with numbers. But see, my thing is like, okay, when it was just the Pikes and they were just shooting at the Pikes, okay, I can see that, like, keeping that on the ground with just, standard guns and stuff like that. Because, using the Boo fighters the fire spray or what have you, that will cause too much heavy damage to the town in which he's trying to protect. But the only time I would use those is when those droids that came up with those shields.
That's it.
That's when you bring that out, because it's like that's the only thing that would be powerful enough.
Yeah.
That has enough firepower to actually penetrate those.
Oh, especially the fire spray. I'm sorry, I would not have gone back for the Rancor. Because here's the thing, you're so concerned about saving the town. This Rancor's like Godzilla going in and busting up buildings and stuff like that. If you would
the
just
whole King Kong thing climbing up the side of the, I was like, oh, really?
I don't really think that was the main motivation. Although, I mean, I'll give that to you because obviously that is a consideration you have to have. What's going to do the least amount of damage? But my thing is sustained gunfire. Because you got to remember, everybody's using their blaster, and it's essentially just being absorbed by the energy shields, which is part of what drove me nuts. It's kind of like, okay, I get it. You're trying to fire at it. It's not working. You need to do something else. Why are you keep shooting at it? And
I'm surprised Mando didn't do that whole thing that they did in the Clone Wars with that. Remember, they would like, okay, the clones kind of figure out a way. It's like, okay, if you roll these droid poppers or these detonators like at the right speed, it will go on, because the shield will kind of just absorb it, and then it will blow it up. Like, just do that.
See, part of my problem with the whole series, because again, I mean, overall, I like the series. There's some weak episodes, there's some very strong episodes, but even some of the episodes that people thought were weak, I actually thought they were cool because, and you and I both, if you actually watch our entire, all our episodes of the reviews of the show, you'll see, I mean, both of us are pretty much in agreement, straight up, about every single episode. I don't really think that there was an episode that we really disagreed about much, if anything.
Not really. No.
And so, because you and I really understood the tone of the show and what this was supposed to be, and we knew it wasn't another Mandalorian show, I think that we pretty much understood and were able to rank these episodes on the merit of what the show was supposed to be.
All right.
But the problem is, given that, you bring up the whole thing, well, why didn't they just pull this Clone Wars thing? And this is getting to my point. The whole reason why I said all that, this is setting this up, is the fact that they really kind of made Boba more uncool. He wasn't, like, if they had kept him the way he was in The Mandalorian even, because, some people go, well, maybe because he didn't have that much screen time and that was that mystery that made him cool. And I was like, no, he had a lot of screen time in The Mandalorian season 2, and he was ultra cool in that thing.
See, the problem I have with it, what they done with Boba, I can understand maybe Din, but because Din being a new character, we really don't know where he ranks in the overall spectrum of people. But Boba, on the other hand, the biggest issue I had with him is that they've made him stupid.
Right.
It just seems like he's just stupid. Like, he just, okay, what should we do? Okay, no, let's do this. Okay, fine, we'll do that then. It's just kind of like he's taking orders from everybody. It's just like, dude, like, you're Boba Fett. Like, what happened to you?
Yes.
It's like,
yes.
Did something happen to you in the Sarlacc pit or something? Like, did that acid get, like,
because the acid eroded his,
yeah, your cerebral cortex or something, dude? Because it's like, okay, this is the guy who was smart enough to, like, okay, let me kind of hide with the debris because I know Han is attached himself to the ship, and it looked like that was cunningness.
That's
And I
it,
don't
man.
see that. I don't see the cunningness in Boba Fett
That's
in
it.
this.
It's
And then
like
even
two
Cad
different
Bane even mentioned it.
characters.
Yeah, and Cad Bane even said, he was like, well, Boba Fett, is ruthless and blah blah blah. You're a killer, and and it's just kind of like, but he kind of brought it up like you kind of forgot that, like you kind of like lost it, like what happened to you?
Right?
Because
Like,
he was
who
like,
are you?
exactly. He was like, I'm still faster than you, and he's just like, well, maybe, and it's just like he's kind of. It
See,
seems like
that whole
Fennec
scene was
Shand.
cool. Like, Boba in that scene, I thought was actually okay. I'm kind of with him in that one. When
But
he
I'd
faced
rather
off
see Fennec
against...
Shand run the crime
I
family. I
know,
mean,
well, and that's
Christ's
it.
sakes, like she's making some more sense, and she actually has like the guts and the fortitude to actually like do something about things.
You know what's really
Whereas
funny?
it's like,
Here's what's really funny. And I thought this when I was watching. Din is actually cooler at this point than Boba is.
exactly.
I
That's
mean,
yeah.
the way that we used to feel about Boba Fett is the way that I feel about Din right now. And that should not be. Especially because when Boba came into the second season of The Mandalorian, I was like, okay, see, that's... Now you
He's
see
gonna
the
get a
difference.
lesson, yeah.
Because...
you're gonna see like what a bounty hunter's supposed to be like.
Right, exactly. It's kind of like, all right, that's a Mandalorian right there. That's a... And it's sad because his own series actually undoes a lot of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be... well, as you probably saw this past Friday, we talked about basically how, in a lot of ways, the Book of Boba Fett undoes some things in The Mandalorian. And one of the things that this show really did, even though it was cool and I liked, again, I mean, overall, I liked the show and everything else, it was just, if they had handled Boba a little bit differently, more like what they did in season 2 of The Mandalorian, I think it would have just been a much better show. And it would have been amazing. Because like you said, at this point, Fennec's the one that should be running everything. I mean, look at what she did at the end, man. That was some Godfather stuff right there.
Exactly. I mean, she was like creepy. She was popping dudes like left and right that you didn't know where it came from. And
when she hung the mirror and all that stuff, and you didn't know.
Yeah.
I mean, there was exactly
like a garrote wire. Like that's what I'm saying.
there was a definite chill that you got when you saw that. I mean, you were creeped out by it. It sort of reminded me of the end of Rogue One.
And I thought it was Boba at first.
So did I.
That's what I thought.
I was kind of hoping.
Like, okay.
I was like, please, just do something cool in this episode. It's. I mean, I did again. I liked the whole standoff he had with Cad Bane. I liked the dialogue that they had. I did think it was weird when he pulled out the gaffy stick, though, because I'm like, where did that come from? I don't know if I'm the only one. I mean, am I wrong? The thing seemed to come out of nowhere.
Yeah,
I didn't see it hanging on him.
No, the second time, yeah, because that's when he was riding the Ranker. But no, I mean, I thought you talked the first. I thought you meant the first time when they first came out.
No, I mean at the end when he basically stabs him in the chest, and I was like, okay, that was supremely cool. But where did the
sucked because I kind of wanted to see more of Cad Bane actually, but
I mean who knows?
But I know it's
Well, here's the thing. They brought him into live action because this is a good time to talk about the whole Cad Bane thing. It's funny that on I think it was the last review. I don't think it was a week ago Friday. I think it was the last, like when we reviewed episode 6 and we were talking about Cad Bane and how it was cool to see him in live action. I said, well, surely they're not going to bring him into live action only to kill him off right away. And then I'm watching an episode going, oh, I guess it's exactly what they're going to do. But here's the thing. It makes sense from the standpoint of, and that's why I love the line when he said, you're an old man or something like that, because I've been reading a bunch of stuff where they figured that Cad is probably about 71 years old. That's more or less the going theory right now, is that he's about 71. And so if that's the case, you can see where him being killed off would make sense. But what it does is it opens the door now for them to go back, say, into something like an Obi-Wan or an Andor or something like that, and maybe bring him into stuff within that timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it kind of ruins the whole Ahsoka thing, But I guess it really depends on. I mean, it almost seems like Ahsoka has to take place after all this.
Yeah, I guess it depends. I guess it depends on what. Yeah, either. I mean, or slightly before. You could kind of maybe do it slightly before then too. I mean,
You could, or you
depends.
could.
It depends on what story you're trying to, get. And that's the thing. We just don't know the full scope of the story. So
Sure, because the Mandalorian is where everything intersects, but we don't know at what point, right? So
right.
when she leaves Mando, where's Thrawn and all this stuff, and she takes off, and then we see her again in Episode 6 of Book of Boba Fett, where she's lecturing him about Grogu or whatever. Maybe Season 1 of Ahsoka takes place in between that, and maybe Season 2 will take place after. It's true, we don't really know exactly how they're going to overlap them. We almost need Season 1 of each one of these shows. So when Season 1 of Ahsoka comes out, then we'll have an idea of when all this stuff is taking place, and then we can start to guess, based on that, when all the stuff will hit on Season 2.
Yeah. So Grogu popping up.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so when the X-Wing shows up, first of all, I kind of had hope that it was Luke. I was like, oh, is Luke coming to Tatooine? I mean, why? But, it would be weird. But then it's like, okay, R2's flying, and brings Grogu back, and, Paley is like, oh, she's all like enthralled and happy to see him and stuff like that. And, one of the first things we notice is that he's wearing the chainmail shirt. And we're just like, all right, well, we just know what his choice was.
Which,
so
it makes sense, because one of the things I was wondering how they were going to get around if they made him choose the Jedi way was, it's been mentioned in a lot of canon comics and books and things like that Ben was his first student. It's like, well, wait a second. If Ben's his first student, then Grogu can't be. I mean, there's been articles and stuff like that said, well, hey, listen, we already know what his choice is going to be based on canon. And it also makes sense from the story that they've been telling perspective, that Grogu's naturally going to have an attachment to him.
Or that, I mean, I thought that maybe like he was going to be his first student, but then he dies, or maybe he just,
Well, then they wouldn't refer to him as his first student, though. That's the thing. It would be different if it was like one of the first or something like that. But, I mean, they made this whole big deal about, no, you're my first student and all this other stuff. So otherwise, it would have been, well, my first student died, and now you're my first student since then. But they never worded it that way. And it's nice to see that the story group seems to be honoring canon by making it happen like this. And to be honest, I think it makes more sense for Grogu to be with Mando at this point. I'm glad to see this, because it's more compelling to me.
Well, yeah, it's just now that it's like, okay, well, it's cool that they're back together, but then now you got to kind of wonder, like, okay, well, what's going to happen going forward? And he's learned a lot, of course, from Luke already, but it's like you got to try to figure out how much does he really know? You know what I mean? Like, because he is 50. So it just depends on when they actually started his training. When was comprehension available for him?
But I mean, Luke himself basically said to Ahsoka, look, I'm not really teaching him anything. It's more like he's remembering stuff.
Right. And that's what I mean. So it's like, well, how much does he remember? Like, what was he taught beforehand? And then are there things that Luke has still imparted on him since then? That he can, because like, yeah, like we saw, what he was able to do to the Rancor, man. It was just like, yeah, man, you're kind of powerful. Dude. I mean,
oh yeah, he's getting it. And you kind of knew that was, I mean, being that Yoda's species obviously is really in tune with the Force, you knew that once Grogu's, and I think that's the whole story purpose of having him be with Luke and stuff like that. It wasn't so much to continue his journey with him as much as what Luke did was basically unlocked his memory. And now I think what's going to happen is you're going to see this floodgate of him. Oh yeah, because it's like, oh, I can flip, I can do all this now, and I wonder what else I can do. And he'll start to remember, and things will come back, and Because that was the other thing that Luke, I think, was doing too. Besides trying to figure out what he remembered, he was also unlocking those memories for Grogu, because I think he suppressed those. And now Grogu's like, oh yeah, Clone Wars, 66. Oh yeah, that
But then
sucked.
also, he told Grogu that he was like trying to, the universe is a scary place, and I'm going to give you the tools to help you protect yourself and keep yourself safe. So that's the other thing too. I'm wondering if he still took the lightsaber with him.
Yeah, I thought about that too. In fact, one of the things that I was really hoping with this episode is that he would have been brandishing it.
The only thing is it's still too big for him, though.
Well, yeah. And the other thing too is that if you really look at the end of that last episode, it seemed like Luke was basically, look, you could either have the lightsaber or the chainmail. You have to make the choice. And if you choose the chainmail, yeah, the lightsaber's not like some consolation prize. Like, well, thanks for trying out the Jedi way. Here you go. I mean, I think it's really more like, no, if you choose this other way, the lightsaber basically stays with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much how it's presented. But, Grogu kind of being kind of a sneaky little thing anyway. He's always trying to sneak food or eggs or.
Well, look, I mean,
So
there's no guarantee that there's a couple of things that can happen. Maybe down the line he gets a little bit older. Maybe Luke is like, here, you should have this. Maybe he starts to also expand on his Jedi knowledge. Maybe even builds his own lightsaber at some point.
I mean, that'd be cool too. But yeah, like this, and that's another thing too. Like that whole okay, she's all like, oh, look what I brought. Look who I found. He pulls back the cover and it's like Grogu, and he's just like, what are you doing here? And man, it's good to see. And the way he jumped on us, oh, it's good to see you too. But it's like, I don't know. It just seemed everything just seemed kind of like misplaced.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. It just felt a little off to me. It was cool. It was cute. I just one of the things about Grogu, honestly, that I find that's actually cute and hilarious. I just love the way he walks, because he kind of does this like whole little.
Well, now he's got like a little bit of swagger to him. It's kind of like, yeah, dude, I'm a Force user now. I can, yeah, I got this. And he starts doing his little, his little thing. He's not so timid anymore. He's like, yeah, Ranker, I got this. I mean, it's
man. And I mean, like, and the thing is, the fact that he's able to, it seemed like he's getting stronger, being able to do bigger things without getting so tired. Because the first thing he did, he was destroy that bot, right? Now that's a pretty big machine, even for a human, but let alone him. But he completely just brought that thing down and ripped the whole core off this stupid thing. And then he still had enough energy to go deal with the Ranker and put that to sleep. I mean, that eventually put him to sleep too, but it was still kind of like, all right, you're getting some stamina.
Yeah, he's definitely getting more stamina, and it was, I mean, I have to admit, it was super cute when he curled up against the Ranker and fell asleep, and you're like, oh, that's cool.
You're thinking that thing is gonna eat him or something, but
it'd be like, I don't know, man. I hope you really communicated your intentions, because
oh man. But yeah, this whole episode was just kind of like you said, it had some cool stuff in it, but I just felt like a lot of stuff was just either stupid or kind of just misplaced. Or it just lacks something. Like you said, perfect word was lackluster. I mean, that was just it didn't have the good writing that I was expecting, especially after coming off the last episode.
That's the problem. The last two,
and the last, you're right. The last two.
You had the Mandalorian centric one, and then you had the one with Luke and Grogu and all this other stuff and Boba and everything. And then those are really strong episodes. And then the problem is it's the finale. You're giving us this as a finale. I think that, and we brought this up last time, if this had been a 12-episode show, and this was episode 7, and you had 5 more episodes where you can really develop a lot of things, and because that's the other thing too, I think that, and you were alluding to this, is that it felt a little bit rushed.
Yeah.
And we said that. We said, look, you're going to have to sit there and try and tie up a ton of loose ends. I mean, at least it was an hour,
Right.
Otherwise, because the whole time, the first thing I did when I loaded this episode up was, I kind of like hit the remote so I could see how long it was. Because I'm like, you have a lot you have to tie up in this last episode. This thing better be, a significant amount,
Yeah, definitely.
I'm trying to think of like what else was in there. Because that's the thing too. I mean, this is a really densely packed episode.
Well, yeah, like kind of honestly, I thought, which I'm glad, because I thought Black Chrysanthemum was done for.
So did I.
I was really
know.
happy to see that he actually made it out of
Me
the
too.
situation alive. Especially even at the very end, when they were all like kind of picking with him, like, "Hey man, get up!" He's like, "No," and even Bo was like, "Yeah, man, I owe you like a couple of dips in the back of tank," and I'm like, "How? Like
exactly.
That thing is bigger than him."
That's another thing that I was going to say too. How
like, you
is
gotta
he? Is there an extension pod or something? Or
we got a spare one, like a full, like Wookiee friendly. It's like the big and tall version or something. I don't know, but
man, I'm so glad. I'm glad you brought that up, because that was the other thing that I meant to pick on. Which I'm having a lot of fun picking this episode apart. But yeah, as soon as he said, "Oh, I owe you a dip in the back to tank or whatever," and I'm thinking, how's that gonna work? I mean, you barely fit in the thing.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of reminds me of my hyperbaric chamber I used to be in. But
oh yeah, it's totally what those are like.
But the thing is, too, it's like, man, can you imagine having to clean that thing after Black Chrysanthemum, all that hair being in there?
Oh yeah, that's another thing. Do they have like a pet version or something? Like something, it's kind of. I mean, just something. I mean, they have that for vacuum cleaners, right? It's like right, it's something that's a little bit more for fur and all that stuff. Because yeah, I mean, and then of course he gets out of that thing, he's gonna smell like a wet dog or something.
Oh man, that's I mean,
it's like
go outside and
air out, or get some sort of a weird Wookiee-sized blow dryer that you can just kind of go to town on them,
like a Wookiee steamer. but yeah,
that's
man. I mean, it's crazy just watching Black Chrysanthemum, like survive all this.
It was cool because he did, and that's what I really liked about it. I liked the fact that in the one episode he was in the bar, he was taking different kind of shots, right? But then in this one, I love the fact that they really showed just how tough and resilient he is. Because I think you need to establish that, and I really want to see more of him. I don't. It's like, yeah, I thought the same thing. I'm like, oh, come on, don't kill off one of the coolest non-live action thus far characters when you're just bringing him into the world.
Yeah.
Into the live action world, I mean.
Yeah, and that's why I felt so bad about, Cad Bane, because I was like, man, I really want to see some more stuff with him. Because he's such a cool character.
I mean, it would be cool, and I mean, even in this timeline, it would be cool. Again, with him, I think it's a different thing, because his prime was really more toward the, in the Clone Wars period. Even when Django was alive, that was kind of, and you could still do that. I mean, if you come up with a bunch of live action series that take place during that time period, you've established him as a live action character. So I think you can go back and do that. Black Chrysanthemum, on the other hand, he's kind of in this time period. He wasn't really around. I'm trying to think of what the timeline was in the Vader comic. It was like maybe a little bit before episode 4, possibly. But really, it's more in the original trilogy timeline that he kind of starts to pop up. So it's important for him to make it through. This is kind of like his thing,
Yeah.
Now, did you happen to see the post-credit scene or mid-credit scene?
Yeah, I did. I'm trying to figure out who that was in the tank.
That was Cobb Vanth.
Was it? Oh, okay.
It was. Yep. That was Cobb Vanth. I mean, and it was good that they actually showed that, because of course, there was that little mystery line at the end. It's like, well, I owe you a dip or two in the back to tank or something like that, but right now it's occupied or something. And of course, your first question is like, well, who's in the back to tank? And why aren't they out here
Right.
fighting? Well, I guess if they need to be in the back to tank.
Back to tank, yes.
But still, I mean, it's kind of like, do you just have the sniffles and you're trying to get through this? Or, I mean, are you mortally wounded? I mean, what's going on? And then when it's Scott Vanth, you're like, oh, yeah, okay. Which makes sense because if you look at Cad Bane, I mean, it wasn't like he was mortally wounded. Cobb was shot in the shoulder or something like that and kind of went down. And so I'm glad to see that they're foreshadowing that he's going to be back because I actually think he's a really strong character too.
Yeah, I think he's going to be essential in helping Boba, trying to regain some control and some stability back, in that on Tatooine.
Oh man, I hope so.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I just really want to see like how, like once again, like Fennec Shan, man. She's kind of like the quiet, unsung hero because she saved everybody's butts, really.
I know,
because she saved like the little mod squad. She said, when she was talking on the communicating, she came in and popped those guys, helped out Black Chrysanthemum, and then jetted back. And she still saved. I mean, well, she didn't save, but she really did her part as far as getting to the mayor and the head Pike and taking him out. So it was just like, okay. And I really would love to see like, what her role is going to be, in next season.
Well, here's the thing. That was just this episode. Think of all the other episodes that she basically saved people, It's she's kind of the unsung hero of the thing. And you wonder if they're trying to set up, you and I don't really see eye to eye on things. I think I might have to establish my own thing, or I might have to take this from you, and you just need to go back to bounty. Because here's the other line that drove me insane. And it was at the end. They're walking through the town, and it's that typical Western thing when once the danger's over and the town's cleaned up, they have the happy music and they're just kind of cruising through the town and having kind of a little post
party or
kind of like a little
street celebration.
Yeah, exactly. Just like a happier conversation, and then it goes to the credits. So they're at this point, it's a typical Western type of a vibe, and Boba's just all like, hey, we're not really cut out for this kind of thing or whatever. And I'm sitting there thinking, you didn't think about that before at all. I mean, Fennec even tried to tell you that. It's kind of like, so it almost makes me wonder if they might be setting up a thing to where he sort of hands the crime boss thing over to her, and he more or less floats in and out. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And quite frankly, it's kind of like, I really, for a second, I kind of was wondering because, he shot off that one, his jetpack missile, right? Which I always think is so cool.
It is
cool. I do like Boba Fett's like armor though, because those knee guns or whatever the heck that he got, like I keep forgetting about those things, but every time he uses them, I'm like, man, that is so sweet. But I'm like, okay, when he popped back up, he had another missile, and I'm like, well, where the heck did he get that from? I was like, well, he probably had a spare one like in the palace or something. When he went to go get the Rancor, he's like, well, I might need another one, so let me, plug this one back up.
Well, that's the only thing that's bad about that particular weapon is it. I mean, if it had
got one shot with it,
right? If it had a mechanism where you can load maybe like 3 of those things, but it's basically a one and done thing, and then once it's gone, I mean, where do you keep your spares?
Exactly.
I mean, you'd think you'd want to keep something close by in case, I don't know, you need to shoot another one. So it's one of those like, well, you better use that thing wisely.
And you better be accurate.
Absolutely, because what would happen if you discharge that thing and either you miss or you come across a situation like 10 minutes later and you're like, oh, I probably should have used it here. Maybe I didn't really need it there. Maybe I could have just used a knee gun or something. This is where I really should have used the missile.
Yeah. But yeah, that whole, like I said, just a lot of stuff about this was kind of crazy, but I don't know, man. It's done now. It's in the can. We have to look forward to Kenobi in Mandalorian season 3.
Well,
so
but
I have no doubt that that's going to be good.
No, and I do have high hopes. I mean, I had high hopes for this too, but I do have high hopes for Kenobi But the question is, before we basically turn this over to our audience or whatever, but where do you think the Book of Boba Fett is going to go in season 2? Because I think that's the question. Like you said, we're done with season 1 now. It's in the bag. We ripped the episode a new one. And so now, I guess it's a 2-part question. One, where do you think it's going to go? And then, of course, what would go along with that is, where would you like it to go? What would you like to see season 2 be?
Well, I mean, I think they're kind of, both of those answers kind of go with each other. I really think that it's going to be, once again, Boba trying to reestablish his reign yet again, and most eyes, well, not most Isley, but most Espa, and I think there's got to be some. This probably was with Cobb Vanth being in the back of the tank. I'm sure there's going to be some meeting of the minds. It's like, okay, how are we both going to reconcile and like, okay, Freetown is here, you got that, but we also may need you for this, and just the structuring of everything. I think Fennec is going to play more of an important role. I think she's going to say, look, we almost lost this thing to the Pikes because you didn't, or you. I think Boba's going to have to come to terms where he can't just be so benevolent all the time. Like, that's cool.
Yeah.
But I think he's going to have to find that inner killer again at some point, or he has to create an illusion, at least, of that, because otherwise it's going to be the same old. People are going to keep trying to test and try him, and you didn't have that with the Hutts. People feared. You came to Tatooine, it's like, put your head down, you just do your business and hurry up and get out of there. People don't feel the same way, and so you have to create that environment, and that's what they're used to.
Well, and I think that, and they did foreshadow that a little bit, because when they were walking through the town, everybody was kind of like bowing to him and stuff like that, because he basically saved him from the Pike. So I think there's going to be some goodwill that he could build upon. I can see now why they were originally, because you could tell the way this was structured, that it was originally supposed to be a one and done type of a thing. So it really does make me wonder what the main storyline's going to be, because I actually think that we're going to see Boba pop up more in The Mandalorian Season 3. I think he's going to help him in his battle for Mandalore or whatever. Maybe somewhat pop up in the same amount of episodes as he did in 2. I don't know. But it makes me wonder if they're going to have the Book of Boba Fett be the 0.5 of the Mandalorian seasons. So everybody was jokingly and rightfully calling this the Mandalorian 2.5. Now we're going to have this, Mandalorian Season 3. Is Book of Boba Fett Season 2 really going to be Mandalorian 3.5? They could do it that way, and it would make sense.
Yeah, I mean, you could. I mean, I also think that, maybe with Boba, maybe with, Bo-Katan and all of them, they kind of form some sort of kind of alliance or something like that. Like, all right, because still technically at this point, Din is still the ruler of Mandalore.
Yeah.
So
that's definitely where they're going to go in Mandalorian Season 3 now. I'm convinced of it.
Definitely.
They did the Luke and Grogu thing. They took care of that in the Book of Boba Fett, which I actually, and we said this in last week's review, that made perfect sense, because now that frees them up to just move on. And that was even before we knew, what Grogu's choice is going to be and all that. Now we definitely know, yes, they've cleared the way. Mando and Grogu are back together. They can now focus solely on the whole Bo-Katan thing. The taking of Mandalore. Maybe Sabine Wren will pop up in that too. Who knows? It'll be really interesting. And I think what's going to happen is, once we see The Mandalorian Season 3, we'll probably better be able to tell what Boba Fett Season 2 is going to be.
Yeah. I think so. I mean, I think that the fact that they kind of cleaned up those loose ends in this show, once again, it's kind of some crossover there, but I think it serves it well. And I think, in Season 3, we're definitely going to have to deal with Mandalore, but I think that's where you're going to see Boba Fett's going to kind of have to come to terms with some of his past and his history as it relates to Mandalore.
Sure.
And maybe, and like I said, maybe there's still like an alliance or something like that where it's like, okay, I'm running things over here on Tatooine, but you know, as being a part of this family, if I need you guys, you know, you could come help, or you know, if you need me, I'll be of service to you guys. It's kind of that goodwill type thing. So
Yeah, basically like
you
what
know,
happened in this season, where Mando's like, "Hey, I'll do it for free because you know we're cool." But
exactly.
here's what's interesting, and this just popped in my head because one of the things that we saw in the Book of Boba Fett, besides the Grogu Luke thing, was they tied up a little bit the whole armor and you know the Children of the Watch. Basically, you know, he was kicked out of that. That's something that a lot of times, I mean, we dealt with it in that episode, which I think was chapter 5, but you know, you didn't really, we sort of glossed over it, but now he still has that, you know, this is the way and that basic belief system, like he basically said, but he's been kicked out of that group.
Yeah, and
So,
that's what makes me wonder, because it's like he's supposed to, if he wants to go back to them, he has to go, you know, purify himself in the waters of Lake Minnetonka or something. But
exactly.
but it could be that switch is like, you know what? Why? When I'm the ruler of Mandalore, when I can just start my own thing in this.
Well, that's what's really interesting because when you tie it all
Me.
into the Clone Wars series and all that, where the Children of the Watch tried to take over Mandalore and all that, I mean, there's a lot of canonical things now that they could really deal with, which I'm also sure, by the way, is going to cross over into Ahsoka. So, again, it's when they establish the first season of each of these shows. Well, I mean, more like the third season of Mandalorian, because that's directly dealing with this storyline. But we have the first story of the first season of the Book of Boba Fett. Once we have season 3 of The Mandalorian, and then season 1 of Ahsoka, I think we'll better know where we're going with all this stuff. And what could we expect to see in which show? So
Yeah.
it's a really good time to be a Star Wars fan. I mean, we've said this over and over again. And that's not even counting the other series that are coming out. Andor, which of course has just been, it's not even out yet, and they've already renewed it for a second season.
Season.
Yeah.
Right. We haven't even seen one episode of this.
Yeah, I know we haven't even seen one episode. Well, I mean, apparently they like what
trailer.
they're seeing. Exactly. There's been no trailer, no nothing. And hey, look, Obi-Wan premieres on May 25th. We haven't seen a trailer for that either. And it's mid-February. So even outside of the Mandalorian, Ahsoka, Book of Boba Fett thing, there's a lot going on. But if you just take those 3 shows, because they're essentially these crossover, you know, they're almost like one big show. They're like 3 different shows that are telling one big story. Right. Even if you look at that, I mean, there's just a lot of really great things to come from that. One of the things that I really hope that we see in the second season of Book of Boba Fett is I'd like to see Crimson Dawn come back. Because there's rumors of Kira series, and I definitely think they could bring Kira into that whole thing and have a whole Crimson Dawn thing. So, yeah, man, I'm really primed for what's coming up next. Again, it was a disappointing season finale, but if I take the show in its totality, still a fan. Still looking forward to the second season. But of course, the question's not what we think. What do you guys think? Hopefully you guys have been chatting. You know, I really miss chatting with you guys and talking back and forth. So hopefully, as we've been watching this, hopefully one or both of us have been able to chat along with you guys and continue the discussion. But let us know what you guys thought of the season finale of the Book of Boba Fett and what you thought of the show as a whole. We'd love to know whether you're watching this during its premiere or maybe you're watching it a little bit later. And of course, while you're doing that, please don't forget to hit that like button because it really does help the channel. Hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you know when we're going to put out our next episode. So, we don't really know what we're going to be talking about this coming Friday, do we? We never do. So, I mean, there's been a couple of things out there that we've been looking at, but we'll have to see. Because every time, and this is one of the reasons why we don't even really announce it. Like, we might give you guys some options, but we never fully announce it. Because I swear, every single time that we say, yes, this is what we're going to talk about, some huge story explodes like on Thursday, and it's like, we got to talk about that. So,
Right.
just don't forget, guys, we're here every Monday night at 8, whether it's pre-recorded or live. We're going to be here Friday nights at 8. So we'll see you guys then. And with that, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the force be with you, always.